I never thought a barn social would change my life, but then again, I never thought I'd meet someone like Owen at a place that smelled like hay and had Christmas lights strung between wooden rafters either. It was one of those community events that my roommate Bryce dragged me to because he said I needed to get out more, which was probably true. I'd been spending too many Friday nights alone in my apartment, convincing myself I was happy with my own company, when really I was just scared. Scared of what exactly, I wasn't quite sure yet. Or maybe I was, and I just didn't want to admit it. The barn was packed when we arrived, music already playing through speakers that had seen better days. Country music, of course, which I pretended to hate but secretly didn't mind. There were hay bales arranged as seating, long tables with food, and a dance floor that was just the cleared centre of the barn where couples were already spinning and laughing. Everyone seemed to know the steps except me. That's when I first saw him. Owen. He was standing near the refreshment table, holding a cup of what I'd later learn was extremely bad punch, and he looked about as comfortable as I felt. He had this way of standing, kind of loose and relaxed, but also alert, like he was observing everything while pretending not to. Dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead, a flannel shirt that somehow looked intentional rather than costumey, and these eyes that caught the string lights in a way that made my stomach do something weird. I looked away immediately. That was my pattern back then. See something. Someone who made me feel a certain way, and look away before I had to acknowledge what that feeling meant. Bryce was already talking to someone he knew, animated and social in the way I envied. I grabbed my own cup of terrible punch and found a hay bale in the corner, content to be a wallflower for the evening. I watched the dancers, the way they moved together with an ease I couldn't imagine having with another person. There was something beautiful about it. The trust required to let someone lead you, or to lead someone else, to move together like you shared the same heartbeat. Then Owen sat down next to me, not on a different hay bale nearby, but on mine, close enough that I could smell whatever cologne or soap he used. Something clean and woodsy. "Hey," he said, and his voice had this quality to it, warm and a little rough around the edges. "You look about as thrilled to be here as I am." I laughed, surprised. "Is it that obvious?" He smiled, and something in my chest shifted, only to a fellow sufferer. "I'm Owen." "Mason," I said, and when we shook hands, his grip was firm and warm and lasted maybe half a second longer than necessary. Or maybe I imagined that. I was always imagining things back then, reading into moments that probably meant nothing. "So who dragged you here?" he asked, settling back against the barn wall. "You've got that look of someone who was voluntold to attend." "My roommate," I admitted. "He thinks I'm becoming a hermit." "Are you?" "Maybe," I said. "Is that bad?" Owen shrugged. "Depends on why you're hiding, I guess." The directness of it caught me off guard. Most people didn't talk like that, didn't cut through the small talk to something real within the first 2 minutes of meeting. I found myself actually thinking about my answer instead of deflecting. "I'm not sure I'm hiding," I said slowly. "Maybe just figuring things out." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Aren't we all? We sat there for a while, watching the dancers, making occasional comments about the music or the decorations or the truly impressive amount of plaid in one location. It should have been awkward, sitting with a stranger, but it wasn't. Owen had this way of being present without being demanding, of making silence feel comfortable instead of something that needed to be filled. The song changed to something slower, and I watched couples pair off, rearranging themselves for the new rhythm. There was something achingly intimate about it, the way they held each other, the small spaces between them. "Do you dance?" Owen asked. "Not really," I said. "You?" He hesitated, and I caught something in his expression, something vulnerable and uncertain. "Used to. Haven't in a while." "Why not?" Another pause, longer this time. Then he turned to look at me directly, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. "Same reason you're maybe hiding, probably. Figuring things out." "Oh," I said, and that single syllable contained so much recognition, so much understanding, that I saw Owen's eyes widen slightly. We looked at each other for a long moment, and I felt like we were having an entire conversation without words, acknowledging something neither of us was quite ready to say out loud. The song ended, and another began, something upbeat and twangy. The moment broke, but something had shifted between us. The air felt different, charged with possibility. "We should probably at least pretend to be social," Owen said, standing and offering me his hand. "Come on, let's get more of that awful punch." I took his hand, let him pull me up, and tried not to think about how natural it felt. How right. We made our way to the refreshment table, weaving through dancers and chatting groups. Someone bumped into me from behind, and I stumbled slightly forward. Owen's hand went to my lower back, steadying me, and even through my shirt I could feel the warmth of his palm. "You good?" he asked, his face suddenly very close to mine. "Yeah," I managed. "Thanks." His hand stayed on my back for another second before he dropped it, and I found myself missing the contact immediately. We spent the next hour just talking, standing by the refreshment table, and then moving to a quieter corner when the music got louder. Owen told me he worked in graphic design, freelance mostly, which meant he spent too much time alone in his apartment too. He liked hiking, old movies, cooking elaborate meals for one. He had a sister in Portland he was close to, and parents he was working on being honest with. That last part he said carefully, watching my reaction. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant without him having to spell it out. I told him about my job at the marketing firm, how I'd moved here 2 years ago for the position, and still felt like I was finding my footing. How I'd always been good at being what people expected me to be, and only recently started wondering what I actually wanted. How scary that question was. "What do you think you want?" Owen asked quietly. "I don't know yet," I said, but I was looking at him when I said it, and from the way his breath caught, I think he understood I was maybe starting to figure it out. The music shifted again, and suddenly someone was announcing the last dance of the evening. Couples were moving to the floor, and there was this energy in the air, bittersweet and expectant. Owen and I stood there, watching, neither of us moving. I was acutely aware of how close we were standing, how our shoulders were almost touching. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Then Owen turned to me, and there was something in his eyes, something brave and terrified all at once. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't quite a question. I felt everything in me freeze and then unfreeze all at once. "Here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why not?" But his voice shook slightly, betraying his nerves. I looked around the barn. There were other couples, all male-female, all fitting into the expected pattern. I thought about what it would mean to walk onto that dance floor with Owen, to publicly claim something I'd barely admitted to myself. I thought about all the years I'd spent being careful, being safe, being what everyone expected. Then I looked back at Owen, at this man I'd known for barely 2 hours, but who somehow felt like someone I'd been waiting for without knowing it. I saw my own fear reflected in his eyes, but I also saw hope. I saw the possibility of something real and true and mine. "Okay," I said. The surprise and joy that flooded Owen's face made my decision feel like the rightest thing I'd ever done. He held out his hand and I took it, and we walked together to the edge of the dance floor. We stood there for a moment, facing each other, neither of us quite sure how to begin. The song was slow and sweet, something about coming home. Other couples swayed around us, comfortable in their roles, in their knowing who led and who followed. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "Me neither," Owen said, and then he smiled, that same smile that had shifted something in my chest hours earlier. "So let's just figure it out together." He stepped closer, and I did too, and somehow we found a position that worked. My hand on his shoulder, his on my waist. Our other hands clasped between us. We were both leading, and neither of us was, just moving together, finding our own rhythm that didn't quite match the traditional pattern but was ours. It was awkward at first. We stepped on each other's feet, couldn't quite sync our movements, were hyper-aware of every eye that might be watching us. But then something happened. Owen looked at me, really looked at me, and I looked back, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Not the other dancers, not the potential stares, not the fear that had kept me small for so long. There was just us, just this moment, just the feeling of being held by someone who saw me and chose me anyway. "This is terrifying," I whispered. "I know," Owen said. "Is it okay that I'm glad I'm terrified with you?" I laughed, surprising myself. "Yeah, it's more than okay." We kept swaying, kept moving in our imperfect way, and gradually I felt myself relax into it, into him. Owen's hand was warm on my waist, his thumb moving in small circles I don't think he was even aware of. We were close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, could count his eyelashes if I wanted to. "I've been alone for a long time," Owen said quietly, his breath warm against my cheek. "By choice, mostly." It felt safer. I get that, I said. I've been alone too. Different reasons maybe, but same result. What changed? He asked. For you, I mean. What made you say yes to this dance? I thought about it, about all the small moments that had led to this one. Bryce dragging me here, seeing Owen by the punch bowl, the way he'd sat next to me and made it feel easy, the conversation that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. You did, I said finally. You made it feel possible. His hand tightened on my waist, pulling me slightly closer. I'm really glad I came tonight. Me too. The song was winding down, the final notes stretching out like they were reluctant to end. I knew that when the music stopped, we'd have to step apart, have to return to being two separate people instead of this unit we'd become. The thought made something in me ache. Mason, Owen said, my name soft in his mouth. Can I see you again? Like, actually see you? Not just randomly at community events? I nodded, not trusting my voice for a moment. Yes, I'd really like that. Tomorrow, he asked. Coffee or dinner? Or we could just walk around and talk? I don't want to wait. Tomorrow, I agreed. All of the above. The song ended. We stood there for a heartbeat longer, still holding each other, neither of us quite ready to let go. Then slowly, reluctantly, we stepped apart. But Owen kept hold of my hand, threading our fingers together in a way that felt both bold and natural. We walked off the dance floor together, hand in hand, and if people stared, I didn't notice. I was too busy feeling this wild, soaring sensation in my chest, this sense of something opening up inside me. Freedom, maybe, or possibility, or just the simple, profound experience of being seen and accepted for who I actually was. Bryce found me as people started leaving, his eyes going wide when he saw Owen standing next to me, our hands still linked. Ready to go? He asked, and I could see him trying not to grin. Actually, I said, looking at Owen, I think I'm going to walk. It's a nice night. Owen squeezed my hand. I'll walk with you, if that's okay. More than okay, I said. Bryce did grin then, full and knowing. See you at home, he said. Take your time. Owen and I left the barn together, stepping out into the cool night air. The sky was clear and full of stars, the kind you can only see away from city lights. We started walking, no particular destination, just wanting to extend this night, this feeling, for as long as possible. So, Owen said after a while, that was my first time dancing with a guy. In public, I mean. Mine too, I admitted. How do you feel? Terrified, he said. Exhilarated. Like I just jumped off something really high, and I'm still falling, but in a good way. You? Exactly that, I said. Like everything just changed. Did it? I stopped walking and turned to face him. We were under a streetlight, and it cast shadows across his face, made him look both familiar and mysterious. Yeah, I said. I think it did. Owen reached up, hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair off my forehead. His fingers lingered, tracing down the side of my face. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice barely audible. My heart was racing again, but this time it wasn't from fear. Please, I whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind, to pull away. But I didn't. I closed the distance between us, and when our lips met, it felt like everything in my life had been leading to this moment. The kiss was soft and sweet and tentative, both of us still learning, still figuring out this new language we were speaking together. When we pulled apart, Owen was smiling, and I realized I was too. I'm really glad you came to that barn social, he said. I'm really glad you asked me to dance, I replied. We started walking again, closer now, our shoulders bumping, our hands swinging between us. We talked about everything and nothing, making plans for tomorrow and the day after, already building something together in the space of a single evening. I'd spent so long being afraid, so long hiding from what I wanted because wanting felt dangerous. But standing there with Owen, feeling his hand in mine, seeing the future spread out before us full of possibility, I realized that the only thing truly dangerous had been denying myself the chance at this, at connection, at love, at being fully, completely, honestly myself. The barn social had been about community, about coming together, about dancing, and in the end, that's exactly what it had given me. Not in the way I'd expected, Not in the traditional pattern of leader and follower, but in something better, something real. Two people finding each other in the midst of their own uncertainty and choosing to be brave together. Owen and I didn't have all the answers. We were still figuring things out, still learning who we were and what we wanted. But we were doing it together now, and that made all the difference. We danced without leading, without following, just moving together in our own imperfect rhythm. And somehow, that had been exactly right. When I finally got home that night, long after Bryce had gone to bed, I stood in my apartment and felt how different the space seemed. Like I was different. Like I'd left one version of myself at that barn and come home as someone new, someone braver, someone more honest, someone willing to dance even when he didn't know the steps. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. "Just got home, already missing you. Tomorrow can't come soon enough." I smiled, feeling that same soaring sensation in my chest. "Missing you too," I typed back. "See you tomorrow." I went to bed that night thinking about Owen's hand on my waist, his voice in my ear, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious. I thought about the dance floor and the starlit walk and the kiss under the streetlight. I thought about how sometimes the scariest thing is also the rightest thing, and how you never know when a random Friday night at a barn social might change everything. I'd been hiding for so long, afraid of what it would mean to be seen. But Owen had seen me, and I'd seen him, and in that mutual recognition we'd found something worth being brave for. Worth stepping onto a dance floor for. Worth holding hands in public for. Neither of us had led that dance. We'd just moved together, figuring it out as we went, creating our own steps in the moment, and maybe that was the point. Maybe love wasn't about leading or following. Maybe it was about finding someone willing to stumble through the unknown with you, someone who made the fear feel manageable because you were facing it together. I fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about coffee and conversation, and getting to know Owen beyond the magic of a single night. I fell asleep thinking about possibilities and second dances and all the moments still to come. I fell asleep smiling, feeling like my life had finally started, like I was finally becoming who I was always meant to be, all because a boy asked me to dance at a barn social and I was brave enough to say yes. Total char count 24,089.